Chapter 2, the first sign. On the first morning, I found Fatima making tea in the kitchen, as if nothing had happened. Her back to me as she poured hot water into the small teapot, and on the stove beside it, she was warming milk in the old aluminum pot she had used for as long as I could remember. The familiar sound of milk bubbles ripening slowly, the sound of the metal spoon stirring sugar in the glass, small things filling the silence. I waited until we sat at the small kitchen table and then asked directly, "What did you mean last night when you said we have been waiting for you? Who was with you?" She looked at me with completely alert eyes, the look of a woman who had slept well and woken with a clear memory, a look of genuine confusion. She said, "What do you mean?" "I didn't say that." I said, "You did, right after you saw me. You said we have been waiting for you." She turned her glass slowly in her hand and thought, then said in a calm tone that was itself disturbing in its calm, "Youssef, I don't remember you coming in last night. The last thing I remember is sitting and looking at the TV. Then suddenly I was in my bed, I fell silent. I asked her, 'You don't remember me coming in or turning around and speaking to me?' She said no." She was looking at me with an honesty I had no reason to doubt. Fatima had never lied in her life. That was what my father used to say about her. My sister Fatima may stay silent about the truth, but she never says other than it. We finished breakfast in relative silence. I told myself that what I had heard was perhaps a hallucination produced by exhaustion and anxiety in the long drive. Perhaps I had interpreted ambiguous words from a tired woman in a way that added meaning that was not there, but the engineer inside me does not accept soft explanations without examination. I decided to observe and document. I began on the first day by sweeping the entire house. Not dramatically, but in a calm, practical way. I opened every room, searched every corner, and recorded my observations in my small notebook. The first thing I noticed, the western room at the end of the corridor was locked, a large rusted iron padlock on the door. This room in my childhood had been used as storage for old things. On my last visit, 7 years ago, it had held my grandfather's old desk and boxes full of his papers. Now it was locked with a padlock I had never seen before. I asked Fatima about it. She said in a tone that brooked no argument, "The room has nothing in it, it's not your concern." The second thing I noticed, the windows of the north room, the bedroom where I used to sleep on old visits, was smeared on their inner edges with a dark substance. I went closer to examine it. The substance was slightly sticky and dark as the color of tar, but when I touched it, it was warm to a noticeable degree, much warmer than the surrounding stone. I cleaned my finger and recorded the observation. The third thing I noticed, on the interior wall of this room directly behind the door, were scratch marks. Not deep, not regular, but very numerous, as if a large animal had scratched the hard stone wall with its claws many times. I asked Fatima, she said she didn't know and moved on. That evening, Al-Khair came to visit. She greeted me warmly and stroked my cheeks with her rough hands as she used to when I was a child and said, "God keep you and bring you back safely." We sat in the main room, Fatima, Al-Khair and I, and drank mint tea in the small glass cups. Fatima was calm and smiling in a forced way, that smile women make when they want to appear normal in front of others. When Fatima went to the kitchen to refill the teapot, Al-Khair walked toward me with quick small steps and whispered, "Listen, Youssef, she hasn't slept a full month, a whole month without one good night's sleep. She spends the night sitting in that corner talking words we can't understand." I said softly, "What does she say?" Al-Khair said, her eyes moving between my face and the kitchen door, words that aren't Arabic. Sometimes she laughs, and her laugh is not. Her laugh, it's deeper and hoarser. Sometimes she cries quietly with no tears. Sometimes she stands and walks toward the wall of the western room and places her hand on it and stands there a while. And when I ask her in the morning, she says she doesn't know. I asked her, "Since when has this been happening?" She thought about a month and a half. It started after she found that board. I asked her, "What board?" She opened her mouth to answer. Then we heard Fatima's footsteps returning from the kitchen, and Al-Khair moved away and sat as if she had said nothing. That night, I put my phone on the room's table, opened the voice recorder app, left it running all night, and closed my eyes. I woke at 2:32 in the morning to a sound. The sound came from Fatima's adjacent room, breathing, slow, deep, repeated, breathing with a disturbing regularity that was both calming and alarming. Not the breath of sleep, the breath of someone awake and conscious and deliberate in their breathing, a steady rhythm like the rhythm of worship. Then it stopped suddenly. Then I heard what froze the blood in my veins. Footsteps on the ceiling. The house is a single story. The thick stone walls block outside sounds to such a degree no animals live in this house, and on the ceiling, footsteps, clear, slow, heavy, perfectly regular, like the footsteps of a person strolling. I counted the steps, 8 steps to the right, stop, 8 steps to the left, stop, back and forth, with the same rhythm, the same weight, the same mechanical regularity that was terrifying. I did not move. I do not know why. In the first moment there is something that orders the body to freeze, not fear in the physical sense, the opposite of movement, a pause before decision. I lay in bed counting 8 steps, going stop, 8 steps returning. For 2 full hours, without interruption and without change in rhythm, as if the hour and a quarter of 3 in the morning was a designated waited time for something happening above us. At 4:10, the footsteps stopped, suddenly complete silence. Then, from the corridor outside my room came a faint sound. I opened my room door slowly with extreme caution. Fatima was standing in the middle of the narrow corridor, looking at the ceiling. Her eyes were wide open and her mouth firmly closed. Her white sleeping clothes hung calmly. She was standing with a strange stillness that is not natural for a person standing in complete darkness at 3:30 in the morning, staring at the ceiling. I called her softly. Fatima, she did not respond. Called a little louder, Fatima. A long moment. Then she began to turn toward me, and here I saw the thing I have not forgotten to this day. The turning was unnaturally slow, not the slowness of the sick or the tired. The slowness of something moving through a medium far denser than air, as if the air around her was something else, as if she were turning in water when the turn was complete. And she faced me. She smiled a smile I had never seen on her face before, a smile slightly wider than her natural smile by a few millimeters, but those extra millimeters made her look completely different. She said, "Sleep, Youssef, the night is long." Then she turned her back and walked to her room with ordinary steps and entered and closed the door. I looked at the ceiling above my head. Brown, dark stone, nothing else. I returned to my room and sat on the lower edge of the bed until dawn. When the first pale light began seeping through the gap in the curtain, I picked up my phone and went to the app. I listened to the whole recording twice in the 18th minute, in the period between the end of Fatima's breathing rhythm and the beginning of the footsteps on the ceiling. There was a sound I had not heard with my own ears, but the recording had captured the sound of breathing. Quiet, slow breathing very close to the microphone, extremely close. I raised the phone speaker volume to maximum and listened again. The sound was clear, human breathing, quiet, regular, extremely close to the microphone that was on the table beside my head. My phone had been placed less than 1 meter from my head. The room had been completely closed from the inside, and I was in it alone. I closed the app, then opened it again and listened to the same passage for the 3rd time. I wanted to hear it differently. I wanted to find an explanation, the ventilation system, perhaps my own breathing while asleep, background noise that resembled breathing. But the breathing in the recording was calmer and slower and deeper than the breath of any sleeping person, and in it was something I could not name. A wrong rhythm, breathing but with a rhythm that did not belong to the human way of breathing. I went out to the small courtyard in front of the house and sat on the stone threshold and looked toward the village, drowning in grey dawn silence. A few houses, thin wisps of smoke from cooking chimneys, the distant sound of a rooster announcing morning. And behind all these ordinary, beautiful things, inside me was a quiet and disturbing certainty. Whatever is happening here cannot be explained by familiar logic. And that certainty was more frightening than anything I had heard.